video is brought to you by my patrons and by viewers like you. Quick heads up. Throughout this video, I refer to Fujiwara Maki as Maki, and that's because I am not sure if Maki is her first or last name. Fujiwara, now that I think about it, sounds more like a surname, and Maki, I know, is a popular given name, but because the cover has Fujiwara first and Maki last, I kept referring to her as Maki, which is also how our professor was referring to her. However, I would prefer to make sure that I'm saying her last name, and the website that published her book in English calls her Fujiwara. And I think that since I've seen Tsuge Yoshiharu, her husband, with his last name first, I think that I should have been calling her Fujiwara, and I apologize in advance for that. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, let's start this video. Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to Blue Dragon Art. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This is an art-related channel where I talk about either indie projects, indie comics, or just things that interest me that tend to be art-related. And this week, I'm going to be talking a tiny bit about Fujiwara Maki's My Picture Diary, as well as showing some footage of myself working on a copy of like the style for the Introduction to Nonfiction Comics course that I'm taking. Now, most people probably don't know who Maki is, at least here in the West. They might know her more in Japan. I had never heard of her, but her book, My Picture Diary, did actually win some awards, I believe, here in the West. And so, just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, she was the wife of a famous mangaka, and I think he was also a photojournalist. His name was Tsuge Yoshiharu. He was the author of some underground comics in the 1960s and 70s. One of them is Screw Style. One that I actually have access to and plan on reading is The Man Without Talent. But he had depression, and he had met Maki. She was actually also part of the underground art movement. She was an actress. They would do pop-up happenings, uncensored, very risque theater and stuff, and then they had to run from the cops and shit like that. So Maki was kind of I wouldn't want to say famous, but she was in the art sphere making her own art before she met Tsuge. Yeah, Tsuge is his last name. They had met because they were both kind of part of underground circles. And after she married him, because of how traditional Japan was, and probably to a degree still is, I don't know, I'm not here to talk about the Japanese culture, but when she married him and had a child, she was pregnant before they got married. She might have even had the kid before they got married. She had to take on this very traditional homemaker role, caretaker role, not only to their young son, but also to her husband, who, as I mentioned earlier, had really bad depression. And because, how traditional things were, he was very disapproving of her going out even to see movies. She talks about this a little bit within the pages of the book, how she finally convinces him to let her get the fuck out of the house for a little bit. It wasn't I think there was a little bit of domestic abuse going on, but primarily it was just she could only take care of the kid and him, and because of his depression and his weird type of work, it wasn't traditional mangaka now where, we hear about them sleeping in the office and shit. He was actually working from home, not working because of his depression. He helped a little bit on some famous comics for a friend of his, and I'll put up an image of that comic. I've seen this comic around, but I've never read it myself. But he really wasn't even working. He was just kind of home, so they were very economically depressed. She herself came from a very economically depressed background. During the war, she had to live with aunts. I don't remember if her dad died during the war or what exactly happened, but they were dirt fucking poor. They would have to get food wherever they could get it. They were poor anyway, but he wasn't bringing in a lot of money, and neither was she. He would work for this one dude, helping as an assistant to work on this other manga, but it was extremely stressful for both, I'm sure, him and her, but her in particular, because when the whole family gets sick, it doesn't matter that she's sick and doesn't feel like working. She has to take care of everyone in the family, even though she's sick, whereas he's sick and he doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, he gets to be babied while she has to do everything for both the sick kid and her husband, and she's sick. So, and according to him, there's a lot of, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how all of this comic came about, but according to him, he had suggested as an artistic outlet for her that she start this picture diary. And she did so initially to write kind of like a fun, cutesy thing for their kid. So everything is like, daddy this and mommy this and whatever. But one of their friends who was in like the publishing sphere, kind of like midway through her working on this, suggested that she do this as like a book for publication, and she might have even had it like maybe some of them published in a magazine. I forget specifically because it's been a couple weeks since I read the biography, but at any rate, some of this is probably a bit in the realm of fiction, because you know how we all fictionalize and see things only from our own perspective, but also Tsuge being a popular male mangaka, until this came out, really anything, and even, a bit afterwards, anything he would say was kind of how things went. That's who they deferred to. That's who they listened to. And so this was really her getting an opportunity to tell her side of the story. And she ended up making a couple children's books after this that are not so personal, but the weird thing is, like, in Japan at the time, you kept your private life to yourself, and for her to do this, and both Tsuge and her both did this, they both would be willing to show their private life and their private experience. It's not like she did it without his permission or vice versa. They were both apparently very open about what their life was like. So this was really kind of different for the time period, because it was so intimate and so revealing of the personal life, and not, keeping things to yourself. But the book basically covers like several months out of the early 1980s when she was making this, and it's very personal, and it shows the struggles both of his depression but also of the caretaker. And for me, this was I appreciated reading it, because traditionally in my own family, when my mom was a kid, they took care of her maternal grandparents in their house. So from a very young age, mom and grandma, and even grandpa to a degree, but he was out of the house working, they all took care of adults who could not care for themselves anymore. And a lot of my grandma's friends, one of them, when her husband fell ill, she had to take care of him, and she ended up dying of a heart attack before he passed, because the stress was so hard on her body. And then my own experience when my grandmother got older, because we all lived on the same property, I skipped a hell of a lot of school to help mom care for grandma until we went on vacation, and we came back and had put her in a nursing home while we were gone. To be fair, by that point, she probably did need that care, but I mean, I know from experience how hard it is. I can't imagine how hard it was for mom. I remember when grandma would fall, it was so hard for us to get her up off the ground, because she was a heavier set woman. So at that point in her life, although she was always active on up until when she was in a nursing home, and they don't just let you go around as you want in a nursing home. But to me, this comic really touched me, just because, and having my own experience of helping my mom and sister take care of my dad when he was dying, you don't always hear the caretaker's side of the story. Sometimes you do, but it was very moving to me hearing this, because it just reminded me, it reflected my mom's experience of my dad didn't do very much to help raise us when we were kids, to the extent that I told the preacher that I didn't have a dad. Like, I said flat out, I don't have a dad. And mom's like, yes, you do. He's just never home. So I found this to be, it spoke to me in a way. But for the class, we had to actually do our own version of it. And in fact, the week that I'm recording this, we had to do another 2 pages, only we're adding a monochromatic color to it, similar to Fun Home. And if you don't know what Fun Home is, check it out. It's by Alison Bechtel. I checked it out from the library. I started reading it. It's really fucking good. It's really interesting. But yeah, so as I wrap up the video, what you're going to see is me working on my picture diary artwork. And then maybe I'll show at the end what the finished piece was, just so you can kind of see what I've been doing in class. There's other assignments that we've had, but I'm not really ready to share them. I might wait until after the class is over to share some of my other art. I don't know, we'll see. But I thought that this was something interesting to share. I'm trying to keep this video short since I'm really fucking busy with class and with work and all kinds of shit. Doing another vlog, so I'm actually recording myself talking. I'm just gonna have this like time lapse and stuff in the recording, but at any rate, if you're interested in this, I highly recommend checking it out from the library first, and if you like it, getting yourself a copy of it. There's so much stuff that I read that I really like, and we only have limited space, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get a hard copy of this, but I really want to, because I really enjoyed reading this. I thought that maybe my mom would appreciate it. So maybe I'll just end up getting it for her for like something. I don't know. She might appreciate it. But at any rate, that's all I've got to say this week. What about you guys? Are there any comics that you've been checking out lately? And if so, what do you think about like assigning yourself something like this where you mimic popular or a well-known artist or comic artist's style and see how you interpret that style and see what comes of it? I think that this is a really interesting way of breaking down what you read and trying to learn from it, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, let me know what you think about that in the comments, and I will be back with another video. Okay, I'm so sorry for missing last week. I really thought that I had scheduled it for the 12th, but I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna put a reminder on my calendar for February 26th, the last Wednesday of the month. That's the next video. And I think that's gonna be the vlog video, unless it turns out that I'm too busy, in which case I have so much fucking footage all over the damn place. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. But I'm hoping for it to be my annual vlog. I really am gonna try to keep it shorter than last year. But that's all I've got to say this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out independent comics. I'll be back later. Peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.